I am joined by Mr. Bake, who happens to run a lab in Harare, or rather in Zimbabwe, or rather in Southern Africa. And here we do not talk a lot about the lab, except the importance of soil sampling and soil analysis. Mr. Bake, we are off-season and we are busy preparing for the coming season. What would be your advice to people on soil sampling and analysis, and why it is important?
Thank you, Craig. I think it's important to tell our farmers there is no idle time on a farm. The time that we have right now after a lengthy season, and we have taken everything to whether we put it in the barn or we have sold our produce, gives us now ample time to take our soils for testing. We cannot really emphasize the importance of testing our soils in the laboratory, but I think we should remind our farmers now and again that this is the time that we need to take our soil samples. Let me start away by why we put emphasis on soil sampling. It's important that the soil that reaches our lab, or any lab, must be truly representative of the area that it was taken from. Why? Because the result that will be coming from the laboratory should actually identify with the place that we took the samples from. And many farmers have been asking us the same question of how we take a soil sample. That is very critical. A soil sample can easily be compared to your rep or your MP in an area, where after we take our votes in an area, we choose one MP. The same thing with our soil sample. After we take from different pots in the land, we mix together, we call that one soil sample. But there are things that we need to observe when we're taking a soil sample. A soil sample should be accurately taken from a field. Bearing in mind there are things that we don't do. We don't take a sample where there's an ant-hill. We don't take a sample near a fence. We don't take a sample where it's always wet and the other places are always dry. We don't take a sample, we don't mix samples. When the colors of the soils differ, we don't take a sample including the debris at the top and including the stones as well. So when you take a sample from an area, you make sure these things are observed. And people have been asking questions of how many samples you take. As a rule, you can take as many samples as you want, but generally we think maybe 2 samples per hectare or 1 sample per hectare will be enough. Bear in mind that if these colors of the soils change, it means now you have to apportion those samples to different colors in the field. Now, what is the depth of your, when you're taking a soil sample? When you take a soil sample, your depth should be from the top to maybe 20 centimeters going down. You'll be slicing going down after removing all the debris at the top. When you take those portions and you put in a paper bag, you do that on different locations. So this is now where you need to plan very carefully. These portions that we are going to take, which we think 10 portions are enough for you to take a sample, are you going to do it in like a zigzag pattern, or you can do them with a random, just pick them, or you do what you call, you take from the corners and you take in the middle and take it the other sides. But I think taking from many portions will be okay. Like if you do a zigzag pattern, you take 10 portions. And all your equipment that you are using for taking those soil samples must be clean. Your spade, your auger, your bucket, your sample packet, all these must be so clean. Remember, in the laboratory, we pick up anything that you have used. So you refrain from using a bag that was contaminated with fertilizer or that had manure, because what it will do, it will reflect like your field is full of manure or full of fertilizers. So when you've taken your portions of sample, you mix them in a bucket. Then from there you withdraw 500 grams. You put it in a sample packet or a plastic bag, and you write your name, and you write your reference, and you write your contacts and your email. The reference now will actually pinpoint where you've taken your sample, whether it's block 1 or block 2. If you don't have names, I suggest that you need to put something to identify where you have taken your sample. Then the sample comes to the laboratory. I think I'm just emphasizing on the part of taking your soil sample before you go to the analysis in the lab, Craig.
Okay. When you say 1 sample per hectare, you know, us laymen would think we only dig one hole in a hectare. So when you say 1 sample per hectare, what is it that you mean exactly?
That's a very important question, Craig. When you take of 1 sample, I'm telling you about the composite of those 10 portions that we have taken. We're using different patterns, either use a zigzag pattern or use random. We take random 10 portions in that hectare. You mix together. You mix thoroughly. The mixing also is very important. If you don't mix quite well, what will happen is that you also will come to the lab in different portions. So you have to mix thoroughly like what the builders do. After you mix them, then from there, you take your 500 grams, you put it in a packet. That now, Craig, is your 1 sample.
1 sample.
That's right.
Very clear now.
It's now very clear. Because when you say 1 sample, if I might take 1 portion and you say that's 1 sample, we are saying from those different portions, which we think 10 portions would be okay. You're using whatever system that you'll be using, either using a random system or using zigzag pattern in your field. And then if you mix those in a bucket, from there you draw your 500 grams or your kg and you write that down as your 1 sample.
Ah, good. Thank you very much. And why is it important that we have to, or why do we have our soils analyzed?
Okay, that's also very, very important. Remember, plants are like us, they feed on a medium. There are so many mediums that we can use to grow your plants. You can even use sawdust to grow your plants, Craig, or you can even use water as your medium. But like most of us, we use the soil as our medium. Now, remember, every year we plant something in the soil, and the soils have got roots that absorb, the moisture, the oxygen, and the nutrients in the soil. So, after every season, or after every time when you are irrigating, we are actually losing away those nutrients that are important to the crops. So what you do is, after every season, or after you irrigate now and again, you take a sample to the lab. The laboratory's job now is now to try to analyze all those major nutrients that are taken up by the plants. We analyze in the laboratory to find what is there and what is not there, what can be replenished, and also what cannot be replenished. Remember also we've got issues of toxicity. We have more elements that are being added by the farmer. So there's also no need to keep on adding those things. Or after a rainy season, you find most of the nutrients have been taken away, either by the air itself, or by the rainfall, or by the sun, you know. So this is now becomes important for the laboratory to start to test what is in the soil. But let me quickly go further and say, what does the laboratory test? Okay, we test for your normal things, your nitrogen, your phosphate, your potassium in the soil, and also your trace elements in the soil. But the plants have got a way of absorbing these nutrients, Craig. The phosphate could be there in tons in the soil, but they cannot be accessible by the plants. So in the laboratory we test what we call available phosphate to the plants. These conditions now make it very important for us to test our pH. At a certain pH level, the plants are able to absorb those nutrients. Now if that pH is not standardized well, the plants might not access those nutrients. That's why now we come to the importance of liming. Liming makes it easy for the plants to access those nutrients in soil. So the laboratory has got to be accurate on their pH. They're also going to be accurate on whatever they are testing, like your calcium, your magnesium, your sodium, or any trace element that is needed in the soil. This is where the laboratory becomes so important, Craig.
Okay, so when you talk of soil pH now, maybe people do not going into detail about soil pH, but maybe briefly, what is soil pH and what is the importance and what's the ideal pH for the plants to grow very well?
Soil pH is one of the shortest way you can tell the level of your acidity of the soil or alkalinity. Anything below 5.6 going downwards, we say this is acidic. These are hydrogen ions. Anything below that, what will happen now is that for your phosphate, anything below that, your phosphate will be locked. Anything above 6, we saw this is also alkaline. And also there are plants that are sensitive to alkalinity as well. So your pH should range between 5 and 6. This is the ideal pH in Zimbabwe that we have seen working for the plants. But also there are other plants that can tolerate low pHs, and also there are other plants that can also tolerate high pH as well.
Okay, that sounds good.
And also let me add a little bit further. We have had a problem in our country where people just assume they should buy any lime. We have got calcitic lime, we have got dolomitic lime. Calcitic lime is lime that has got bias of calcium. Dolomitic lime is lime that has got bias of magnesium. So depending on which one is low, that has caused your pH to be low. Then you have to find out the real type of lime. So now pH alone now cannot define the type of lime that you want to add on the soil, Craig. So it means that now the farmer is going to be forced to test for your calcium, for your magnesium in the soil. The lab now becomes so critical there. So that when our farmer buys, he buys the correct lime. Whether it's dolomitic lime or it's calcitic lime. Fortunately for Zimbabwe, we've got these producers of dolomitic lime and calcitic lime. But over the years, what has been happening, farmers have just been told just to buy lime, you know. And when these things are given to the agronomist, there is what they call a calculation factor for how much you can calculate to put in the soil. This is the work of the agronomist now. Then they tell you what lime to put in the soil. And also, hasten to add, our lime should be the one which has been ground to a certain stage where it's a bit fine. Because if you just put lime which is lumpy, it will take years. As you know, Craig, lime takes time. If you put this year, it may be effective maybe late next year and the following year as well. So this is about your pH and your lime.
Okay. Talking of soil sampling and analysis, one, I've got two questions, but one, who actually is eligible to have the soils analyzed? Is it anybody? Can it be a communal farmer? Can it be a small backyard farmer, a large commercial farmer, or it's only for commercial farmers? And affordability. Can one afford to have their soils analyzed?
Good question, Craig. I think the question is, who doesn't want these crops to grow?
Everyone would want crops to flourish, just to grow and give you good quality yield, good quality crop and high yields. Yes.
Yeah. There's been this issue that it was only meant for commercial farmers. We beg to differ. My gogo in home has got 1 acre that she grows. She takes one sample and it's done very well. And she gets, from that hectare, she gets 10 tons from just 1 hectare, just by having your soil tested. So look at everybody should have their soil tested. Why? You should do this farming as a business and do your farming at a very informed position. I'm saying at a very informed position. You can also do what you call a food test, horticulture test. That is also needed by those who are doing agriculture. So Craig, answer your question, yes, we got price for those different people, the small scale farmer, the one in the communal areas and the one who is a commercial farmer. We got packages for them all, you know, but everyone should test his soil samples. And what it means also to a communal farmer is that look at your small place that you really want to do your farming and do that small place very well. Have your sample tested before you buy any input, your fertilizer, lime. Now take that pH result or that standard test or that food test to whoever is going to sell your whether it's your seed or your fertilizer or your lime. And from there now, you can be able to be told what you're going to say. That actually saves money, Craig. Why I say so? You may find every year you are putting tons and tons of the wrong product, and the product is not growing. Or you are putting tons and tons, or maybe what you need was just to correct your pH. Now there are farmers who have come to us and say, I've been putting phosphate for so many years. It's true. We know what phosphate does, Craig. It goes and it forms what are called pools down there. They are not being available. The pH is very, very low. So until the pH has been adjusted, they become available. So what will happen to that farmer, Craig? They only have to adjust their pH, and all those nutrients become available. How lucky they are.
Hey, very lucky, huh?
They will save thousands of dollars from...
Yeah, I can imagine. Save thousands of dollars. I like the example you have given of a Gogoku Muja. We have had her source analyzed, and there she is, jumps from half a ton per hectare to 10 tons.
Exactly.
You know, assuming that, you know, one sample of Gogo will cost $25.
That's right.
Right? And then out of the $25, you know, just a sacrifice to say, I want to use my $25 to have my soils analyzed. And then you jump your yield just from half a ton per hectare to, you know, to 10 tons. It means you have gained, by using $25, you have gained 9.5 tons, which is very, very important. And to take, for example, tomatoes. If you have hybrid tomatoes and the potential of that tomato is supposed to be 140, 160 tons per hectare. And then if you don't lime your soils, you get 20, 30 tons per hectare. Once you lime, you get, you know, you shoot it by over 100 tons per hectare. So to me, really, it's a bonus to the farmer just by spending a little bit in order to have your soils analyzed to fully utilize the nutrients in the soil and then increase your yields and quality at the same time. So yeah, according to or from what you're saying, so sampling is done, you can do it, or Agritech's, a trained personnel, Agritech's officer can help the farmer on the ground. But now, if farmers want to bring their soils, where do they take it to?
We are fortunate in Zimbabwe, we have so many labs. One of them is Zimlab, apart from the government labs as well. Zimlab is in Masasa, it's number 123 Bogward Road, where they can bring their sample, or they can...
Sorry, you said Bogward Road?
Bogward Road.
Oh, Bogward Road.
Yes, number 123 Bogward Road.
Yes.
That's near Pick and Pay in Masasa there. That's where the laboratory is situated. But I want to hasten to say to farmers, this is something that they have to do. Some farmers have saved themselves thousands of dollars by just bringing a sample to the laboratory. We tested, and then after they applied lime, they saw that over the years they've been applying fertilizer, which was already there. And only that was happening, the plants were not accessing the nutrients. Remember, Craig, for a bag of fertilizer that is very low, instead of accessing 50 kg, they were only accessing 10 kgs of their fertilizer.
Instead of 50.
Instead of 50.
Yeah. Can you explain further on that? You are saying farmers, they put their fertilizer and it's logged. It's not available to the plant.
Yeah.
Right? But just by applying lime, it unlocks it. Can you explain fully on that? What exactly you mean by if your fertilizer, you apply it in a soil with the wrong lime, incorrect pH, at least you won't be in a position to have your fertilizer readily available to the plants. Farmers would want to understand more on that.
Definitely. What happens at times is that the phosphate at times mix up with the calcium and becomes calcium phosphate. Now that molecule is not accessible to the plants until you add lime, and then that breaks down, and then the pH now is so conducive for the plants to access the nutrient. I'll give you an example. Somebody is going to marry. Before you put that $50 for Vramuromo, if you don't put that $50, you want to marry. If you don't put that lime, those nutrients won't be unlocked. If they are knocked out, the roots you see starting to spread. That's why, Craig, you've been doing work for some time. You see, at times you find a plant with what we call standard roots. Those roots now will start to cringe. They cannot penetrate there, and they cannot access those plants. Another example is when potassium and sodium interchange. On the periodic table, sodium and potassium are almost neighbors. And to the plants, it's like a young child, and when they see a bottle of Coca-Cola, there's petrol inside. But when they just see the bottle of Coca-Cola, they will access that and try to drink. Same thing with plants. That will be sodium, it's not potassium. But on the bottle, it looks like Coca-Cola, and they access that. And this is what also affects the plants. But with the right type of pH, which will be corrected, the plants can only access the right nutrients that we want from plants. Another example is aluminium. At a certain level, aluminium becomes available to plants. Craig, have you ever noticed a plant that wants aluminium? I don't think so. No.
Not at all.
So by just correcting
it's not on the list of nutrients.
Aluminium is not there. The same thing also is done by manganese as well. Once the change changes, the whole scenario changes. But we're talking just $3 or $4 of doing your pH, and then everything changes. The nutrients now that are being forced by the plants are the correct ones. But if we don't put the lime, these plants now start getting anything from the soil, but they cannot access the correct ones.
Right.
I cannot overemphasize the importance of just doing a pH test. Now, once that is done, let the people now start to know that the lime that they buy, over the years, people have been buying wrong lime. It's the true lime with what we call neutralizing value above 100%, but it's not the correct one for that type of soil. Why? Because the calcium and magnesium have become so important. There is a ratio that we need from the soil there of calcium and magnesium. Always calcium should be higher than magnesium. Even if you take the leaf, we test the leaf there, there's a 5-to-1 ratio of calcium and magnesium. So that's also what the soil should be. Our manure, that's why manure becomes so important. Our manure has got that ratio. So the soil might not have that. And maybe the other critical factor is that for those who are also doing irrigation, you might be pouring water on your plants with what we call an inverse calcium-magnesium ratio, where you have more magnesium than calcium. That also affects your soil. But for Gogo at home, just a pH alone will help you. She's done. She might not get the correct lime, but that pH enough will actually raise the levels of nutrients in a crop. But for those people who are in A1, people who are in commercial farms, it's critical now that you know the level of calcium and level of magnesium.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yes, viewers, this is very important as we are moving out of winter and preparing for summer season. This is very critical. This is one of the important aspects, you know, when we are talking of preparing for the summer season. Farming starts starts from the lab, or starts with chemistry. You have to make sure that your soils are sampled by professionals and they've gone to the labs for analysis, and then you get a recommendation of your pH and how to correct your pH, the type of lime, as he has been alluding to, and also the type and amount of fertilizer to use, so that you address the issue of imbalances of nutrients in your soil. Once you have done that, you find that you unlock the potential yield of your particular crop, because we are looking at production and productivity in this case, whereby our productivity is actually logged if your soil have got a wrong pH. Unless you correct your pH, you unlock the performance of your crop and you achieve the highest yields ever. So really, as part of preparation for the coming season, let's start, before we plow, let's start with soil analysis, and then we take it from there. After that, yes, as we prepare our land, this is the right time to make sure that if you are into conventional tillage, make sure this is the time to plow your fields. If you are into zero tillage, this is the time now to make sure that you preserve and add more mulch to your crops. And at the same time, make sure you are putting your fertilizers, your fungicides, your pesticides, your chemicals, your seed in place, your fuel. Make sure that your tractors are repaired and they are ready to carry out the job on the farm. And also make sure that if you have boom sprayers, seed drills, planters, all that, they are all actually serviced, they are repaired, they are serviced, and they are ready to carry out the job on the farm. This is not a rest period, but it's a period where you have to run about, making sure that you are ready for the season. Once you do that and you plant on time with the first effective rains, surely there's no way you'd go wrong. You get the best yields out of your crop, the best yields out of your fields in whatever ecological region you are in. Mr. Bake, any parting words to the farmers?
Yeah, as you know, Craig, we've now been advocating for smart farming, where people are not ripping up the soil. And there are farmers now asking, are we also prone to take our samples? Yes, you are. Because what's happening now, because we are not tampering with the soil, it's drying at the top, and the acidity now is forming at the top of the crust, because we are not going down. So also it's important for farmers also who are doing that, we are doing zero tillage, also to take their soil samples. But farmers say, I'm doing zero tillage, so I'm not testing my soils. No, you are, because you are putting nutrients at the top. So we don't want your soil to be acidic. It will be acidic at the top, because you are not going down. So you need to take your sample from there and have it tested.
There you are. It's not only conventional farmers who are supposed to have their soils sampled and analyzed. Everybody, whether you are zero tillage or minimum tillage, and also if you are conventional, it's important, because remember, all the plants, all the crops, they feed from the soil, and the same soil. If pH is out, your nutrients are logged, as you said. Anyway, thank you very much, and Mr. Bake, thank you very much for the wise words. And I will be calling you quite often now and again, so that we share about production and productivity, so that the farmers at the end of the day benefit from their farms or pieces of land. Thank you.
You're welcome, Craig.